Hello, welcome to another rip-roaring episode of Wild Wisdom Podcast. I'm joined by a brand new guest, another old friend of mine, Mark. Say hello, Mark.
Hello, Mark.
We've known each other for 20 plus years, went to college. Same with Alan. We all met together at college. And more than anything else, we're film buffs. And so we're here to talk about, amongst other things, James Bond and what we think of Bond and where we think it's going to head. What do you think of the Daniel Craig movies? Because they're a sort of, you could say that it's kind of Bond in a nutshell, couldn't you, really?
Yes, you could say first of all, you could say that it was just by casting him, it was quite a bold thing to do, because I don't know if you remember the hoo-ha surrounding him. It was in the press. They were sort of a lot of people were very anti the idea of having this guy. It was previous years being having a tall, dark, handsome guy, and then in Craig, it was considered because he was blonde for one thing. It's the fact that he was blonde, it was offensive to people. I mean, God knows what it'd be like today. But it was the fact that he was blonde and he wasn't conventionally handsome, but he was rugged and stuff. And plus, he was a good actor as well. He'd been in some good films, and also the fact that they were starting again from the beginning with the first Fleming book, which is Casino Royale.
It opened in such a brilliant way, though, didn't it? With all the parkour shit.
100%, because it's such all the Fleming books. I mean, some are good and some aren't particularly as good. And in fact, a lot of the previous films would just take the title of the book and jettison the story, and they create their own story. But with Casino Royale, it followed the book quite closely, and obviously updated it very cleverly for the 21st century audience. And
oh, you've read the books, right? You've read most of them?
Some of them, yeah. Not all of them.
Yeah, same here. I've read most of them.
Yeah, and what's great that they do follow a sort of continuity in the books, and obviously in that first one, he's literally the new guy, new promotion to a 007 agent, and he's fresh out of the Navy. He's kind of new to the whole espionage thing, but as the books progress, he does get very disenchanted with the being a spy, and he sort of drinks quite a lot, and doesn't really want to. Gets kind of sick of killing people for a living.
He goes a bit more sort of roguish, doesn't he? He kind of over time, and I loved the whole fact that within those few movies that Daniel Craig was in, it was kind of like the entire storyline of Bond sort of like condensed.
Yeah.
If you were to sort of go from Dr. No all the way up to whatever the latest one.
It was a good reset, because obviously it was not saying this is the same Bond which followed previously. It wasn't, Sean Connery or Roger Moore or even Pierce Brosnan. It was a whole reset, starting from the beginning again, a whole new universe almost. Even though they're using Judi Dench from previous films, but she's a good actress, though you can't not use her. So no, to answer the question, it was a great reset, and also it was great to do a beginning, middle, and end. My only gripe would be that it wasn't obviously planned like that. The second film after Casino Royale, it was kind of rushed, because of writer's strike and everything. It was, they tried to sum up and wrap up everything from Casino Royale, all the leftover points, and wrap it up quickly. And then that kind of, originally the plan was to leave them, I think, to have individual adventures that didn't follow on from the previous film. And I think when they did the next film, which was Skyfall, and it was probably the biggest film they ever had, they wanted to sort of say, well, let's go back to the thing and see what else we can draw and maybe do it. And then with Spectre, which I wasn't really a fan of out of all the films, it was the one I liked the least.
I agree with you, mate. I think out of all of them, Spectre was the one that kind of sucked the most, I think.
Yeah, again, there's a lot of the things on the film budgets this size. They have writers, and then they have people come and rewrite and things, and obviously people care about it and they all have ideas, but when you try and put too many ideas into a script, it doesn't necessarily gel, and you can see in the film it doesn't quite gel together. It's not necessarily actors' fault or anything, it's technically it's always fantastic and everything, but it's
I mean, going back to sort of Quantum of Solace though briefly,
Yeah.
because I liked the fact that it was a different style following Casino Royale, and I think that's the beauty of Bond in that it's not always going to be like this explosive sort of like roller coaster ride. I liked Quantum of Solace because it was more of a sort of a laid back revenge-esque
Yeah.
type of thing, and we don't really get any sort of recompense until the very end, really, about Vesper and all that kind of thing, do
Yeah.
we? But the fact that the Bond villain wasn't so good, I like that. I like when you have sort of high Bond movies and low Bond movies, because it's
Yeah.
kind of like it's not always going to be.
No, and they've got a proven record over the years. If you look back over the previous ones, the 20 or so before Daniel Craig did, they'd have ones where you have a really ace one or a really, really solid one, and they'd always follow up, and the next one would be not as good. For instance, a good example would be, and you can see it, there is a pattern, something down to earth, like you start with like Live and Let Die with Roger Moore, and it's a little bit kind of gritty and dark and places, and then by the time you get to sort of the third one in, The Spy Who Loved Me, it's like he's relaxed into the role. And interesting note, actually, all the actors who manage to get a third film, it's usually their best film. Goldfinger for Connery and Skyfall for Craig. That's usually, it takes two films to kind of fit into the tux a bit and the shoes and get a handle on their version of the character.
But it always tends to sort of go a bit faster.
Oh yeah, no, it does. So you get a half decent film, and then they follow up with something outrageous. So you have something like Spy Love, and then they go Moonraker, and it'd be out of space and outlandish and stuff. So with the next film would always be the complete opposite. So you'd have For Your Eyes Only, which followed Moonraker, which was a deliberate attempt to be very grounded, very well, not real because it's Bond, but as real as they could be.
Yeah.
And the villains are quite low key, and there's no gadgets and hardly any sort of comedic moments. It's played relatively straight, with a few exceptions. So there is an experience of that, like even with Pierce Brosnan, you'd have GoldenEye was quite a straightforward thing without sort of any sort of gimmicks and things, and then it would build up to get more and more outrageous, and by the time it gets to Die Another Day, it's quite with
ridiculous.
Yeah,
I think it's the only word to describe it.
Surfing tsunamis and lasers in space and things. It's but they always do that. They always go as far as they can push it, and then by the next film, it's going to be quite grounded. Which in this case, it was Casino Royale. So
we should mention briefly though that with Pierce Brosnan, he wanted a gritty Bond movie, didn't he?
Of course, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not in the hands of the actor to dictate. Although saying Daniel Craig, I think, is the only Bond actor who actually had any control over the ending. It's quite divisive amongst the Bond fans, from what I've read.
Yeah.
We talked about 20 plus years ago, and we were just talking about the films. Even then, it was during the Pierce Brosnan era, and you said if they were going to make one more film, if it was going to be the last film, they should do this. And it was quite, and I said to you at the time, thinking that they'll never do that. And then this current film, they did.
So, it's like smug mode.
Yeah.
I knew that. There was really only one way to bring a sense of gravitas to the role.
Yeah.
And the character, and that was to do what they did.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. Just what a brilliant way to finish off the run.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say that I'm worried about who they're going to bring in next. I know that Broccoli isn't. She isn't going to sort of succumb to current sort of political, social.
Yeah, she's already stated. She says Bond will always be a man.
Yeah.
So it's which is fine. But this is the thing: when you got a successful run of films, which this year will be 60 years since the very first one of Dr. No. Of all film franchises, this is actually the longest one. I can't recall any one that's sort of gone on this long.
How long were the Carry On films lasted for? That's nowhere near as well.
Oh no, there was only 20 years, I think, most. But they literally were doing a film per, maybe 2 films per year. So I think there's about 30 of them altogether.
Right.
And with the last Bond film, it was the 25th But during the Craig era, they were taking longer and longer breaks because in the old days, it was literally you do a film, and then 2 years later it'd be another one, and then 2 years later another one, and then as the times changed, it would be like 3 years, and then when Craig took over, it was literally 5 years per film. So it's he was Bond the longest, but he was also, didn't do the most amount of films. It was he just took longer breaks between Bond projects so he could do other films.
And he was the only Bond that did his own stunts, right? Daniel Craig.
No, not necessarily. What I gather, I mean, all the actors, well, not all of them, but I know Timothy Dalton was very keen to do his own stunts because, and he was a very interesting actor in the sense that he was a precursor to the Daniel Craig era, in the sense of going back to Fleming and the books and making Bond a bit of a blunt instrument, as they say in the film. He was very good acting. He thought it was important to do a lot of the stunts, physical stunts that so you always can see that it's him. Whereas someone like Roger Moore, I guess, was quite happy to let the stunt man take over.
Oh yeah.
But he said he
gives him his syrup as well.
he was very good in he did all the love scenes himself. He said, but he was
of course he did.
But he said I'm no good after the third take.
Oh, he's such a dirty kid.
Yeah, I love him.
Old Rog.
I love him. And see, he was my Bond growing up, because he was always on, the tail end of his run of films. I mean, I didn't know any better. So, when you see him, you're thinking, oh, this is, spectacular and everything. It's and then to go from him to Dalton, it was quite wow, this is a bit different. Wow, this is actually really good.
Yeah, the Dalton Bond movies are definitely the ones that stand out to me the most. If I'm going to sort of pick a definitive set, then it's definitely Dalton. But
he definitely deserved to do a third one, and they got into some legal troubles with the owners of Bond with MGM, and it was a lot of legal stuff that went on for a bit too long. And by the time they got it sorted, Dalton said, I'm a bit sort of past it now, and then they got Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah,
but I would like to see a third one with Tim, because he was, as you say,
he was the one that had it pretty much accurate.
He was Ian Fleming's Bond, I think.
Yeah.
As much as they say Craig is, I think he's the Fleming Bond of the books. Because he's constantly smoking and drinking, and there's women and stuff, but that's not the main thing. It's just mainly doing the job and getting on with it. But he never looks like he's enjoying it, if you know what I mean. It's the job.
Yeah.
It's
I think for me the attraction for that I have for Bond is like on the surface you see someone who is cutthroat, a complete arsehole, a womanizer, drinks all the time, doesn't give a shit. But then when you sort of you peel back that surface and you look at why he's like that, then you kind of get it.
Yeah.
Because you go and I think that the Daniel movies kind of showed us why he's a bit of a sort of a prick in a sense,
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's, you're absolutely right. The Fleming things, originally they were popular, I guess, because they were a fantasy thing for I guess for guys to saying, hey, this guy's I could be like this and just travel the world, exotic places, and endless expense account and beautiful women and so on. And by the time the films come around, and that's what made them successful, because no one had ever seen anything like that. Like the good thing about those Bonds in the early days, that they literally put every penny up there on the screen. I mean, I'm sure they still do. They try and do a lot of things practically. Very minimal use of CGI. They try and do all the effects as real as possible. That really does make a difference. So when they go to these places, they're actually there. It's not faked in some studio.
Yeah.
And I think it was the whole exoticness of it, because particularly in the early days, people don't go on abroad like they did today. They luckily go to the seaside for their holidays, for if they were lucky and if it wasn't raining, so to go to somewhere like Jamaica and these exotic looking places with palm trees and blue sea and beautiful women and cocktails and things, it was almost as close as you get to
it was a sight there to see on the screen as absolutely. Well, and all those shots,
beautiful Technicolor and sound, and it was modern, because previous films in those, particularly that era, it was always sort of kitchen sink dramas and sort of, nothing exotic looking. I mean, you had film epics like Lawrence of Arabia and Dolce Zhivago and things like that, but they were epics. They sort of, based on, books and things. It was they were entertaining, but it wasn't an escapism. That was just the backdrop to the story. But with Bond, it's very much a fantasy thing, and it's like, anyone can sort of enjoy it. They don't take themselves too seriously, and it's just a fun ride for next to 2 hours, and just enjoy all the and they always move with the times. All the current fashions and the cars he drives and watches and stuff. It's very much the fantasy element of that. But you're quite right with saying with Craig, he sort of dared to peel a little bit sort of underneath all that, to go a little bit deeper. I think it was around that time as well. The films were starting to do that with Batman as well. They tried to make him, go deeper, as like why he was how he was, sort of thing. It was around that sort of era of analysing the characters a bit too much, whereas before they were just like, this is the character, this is what he does, bish bash bosh, that's the film, so
I do think, as much as I don't really like the movies, I do think that the Bourne movies did a lot to the whole action genre, because the fast sort of paced fighting scenes and shit, the fast cuts, which can be a bit annoying today.
That's what I was saying earlier. They definitely move with the times. You're quite right. The Bourne things come out at the same time as the Craig films, and that reflected that. But the great thing the Bonds did was move with the time. They also set the precedent, but then they moved with the time. So by the time you got, again, I go back to Live and Let Die. This is around the time of the blaxploitation films of the 70s, and they on that. And then the next film, it was the Bruce Lee Kung Fu craze, and you had the Man with Golden Gun, which used those elements of Kung Fu and things. And then Moonraker was a direct result of the success of Star Wars. Octopussy had elements of Indiana Jones and License to Kill to a point. It had those sort of action films of Lethal Weapon and sort of Schwarzenegger type sort of violent action things. It had those elements. So they always had elements of what was in flavour at the time. They always sort of moved with the times, and even the Craig films, as you say, the Bourne stuff, and
definitely influenced
100%. And they always move with what's sort of current, and so whatever the next direction they'll go in, I'm with you. I'm not worried too much about who they'll get, but it'll be, they know what they kind of know what they're.
I trust them.
Yeah.
It's not like
it'll be controversial.
I'm a bit worried. Yeah. I mean, I don't care really sort of who it is, as long as it meets a certain list of rules or abides by a certain list of rules. And I'm not going to go into it because that's dangerous territory. But
I think if they go anywhere, they'll stick to the same principle they used for the previous 6 actors, in that it won't be anyone A-list famous. Like I know they mentioned Tom Hardy and big names.
He's never going to get it.
No way. But with Fassbender and Henry Cavill and stuff, they've all made sort of A-list films. But the previous actors they choose someone who's usually a very good actor, like Connery and Moore and even Brosnan. They've been in films, but they weren't.
They weren't famous.
They were usually a supporting role or a thing, or they've been in something on TV. Like Craig he was in Layer Cake. Yeah, that was almost
that was his Bond audition.
Yeah, it was exactly. Yeah, you're quite right. It was it's a great film, and also a wonderful starring role for him to show that he could pull off the chops, to do Bond. And but he done a lot of supporting work as well. He's in Road to Perdition. Tom Hanks, he played the baddie in that, and Munich as well. He's in that. So, it'll be someone like that who you've seen them in films, but you don't necessarily might not know.
Yeah, they might be on the rise or on the fringe. They're popular, but they're sort of they're on the side.
Yeah, and all previous actors they've chosen have been that. So I think they'll stick to that formula. It'll be someone who we may have seen already. But not necessarily, a name. But they just do that just for publicity, because it keeps the.
It keeps
it trending socially.
I don't know. I might be quite surprised with what they pick next. I don't know whether they'll be listening, but in case they are, we've got some ideas about how they can start up again, right? I'm sure they're sitting in a circle at the moment, going, right, how do we start it all up again?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they go they go one or two ways. I think this is my own opinion. Now they go two ways, but they'll have either there will obviously be a reboot of sorts like they did with Craig. They'll have a young Bond, even younger than Craig. They'll have a sort of even
Like pre-Navy, you mean?
well, maybe just post-Navy, but it'll be in
Yeah.
his late 20s sort of thing, and it'll be an origins of sorts, and they'll go down that route of, you know, starting working his way into the service, and by the end of probably that film, he's, you know, become 007.
Yeah.
Or they'll go the other way. They'll go is just how they used to do Bond films when they changed actors. It'd just be a traditional adventure with a, you know, pre-credit sequence and then a meeting with them. Here's your mission. This is the villain. This is the Bond girl, and the explosions, the action, and then that's it. It'll just be a straightforward adventure. I think. I don't think they'll go through the whole rigmarole of starting again and earning his stripes and everything.
You think they'll just jump right in?
It could be that, or it could be that, or they will start. But if they start from the beginning, it'll be very young, and that because, you know, I guess from an actor's point of view, if they're good, they'll have a series of films with that one actor for, you know, the next few years. It'll be a way to sort of build him up, and plus as well to get a new audience in as well, because I know from the last film, a few friends of mine, girls who don't necessarily like Bond at all, but they all went to see No Time to Die and loved it. You know, and they said, oh, and I don't even like Bond, but there was something about it that really drew them to it. And I think, you know, they're very clever. They do the producers, you know, they use, well, obviously what's current, like the song with Billie Eilish. You know, she was a good attraction because I remember this girl, she said, oh, I don't like Bond, but I love Billie Eilish. So, you know, it's already she's, you know, her interest is, you know, there, and plus as well, we were just coming out of a lockdown and everything, and people just wanted to go out, and so they all went to see it. But was surprised by how good it was.
I mean, you know, my idea was always don't advertise that it's a Bond movie. You know,
yours is quite a bold way to do a new Bond.
Yeah, I think they should just come out with here's a story about an ex-Navy dude, and then blah blah blah, he's actually really good, and then right at the end, boom, and everyone's just like, what the fuck, this is a Bond movie.
Right? He just goes under an assumed name or something.
I think that would just be absolutely brilliant if they did it that way. It's just like they completely bluff everyone.
It'd be a hard sell though. I mean, you can't, the films have, obviously, you know, the Bond's such a big brand, they can't push.
But they just have to have a hook. They just have to hook, like, you know how the Kingsman movies. I mean, they're quite good. If they did something in that kind of vein, it could work perfectly. I mean, you know, when it comes to sort of Bond, it can be quite versatile. There's a lot of things that you can sort of explore with it, I suppose. And I do like the sort of the bastard nature of the character, because you have to be in that world, you know.
You've got a guy who murders for a living, you know. He's got a license to kill. So. No, I'm like I say, I'm like you. I'm not worried about where they're going with it.
It's in good hands.
Yeah, they've had 60 years of films. I think wherever they go. And what's great about it is if it doesn't work, whatever it is that doesn't work, they'll you know, acknowledge what didn't work. And they'll come back again. I think because it just makes too much money to leave it. They won't ever put it to bed. The only way they put it to bed is if it just stops working and stops making money. But I mean, the last one, you know, like I say, we was coming out of a lockdown, but it did absolutely incredible business, box office around the world. So
it humanised Bond, and I think it's really one of the only Bond films that actually humanised Bond in a way that we actually felt for him, because it was so sad. And the fact that because I mean, we've talked about this. I reckon that he kind of, like, halfway through the movie, he was like, oh fuck, I want to give up now and go away with Leia and start a family and all that kind of thing. And then he gets to the third act and it's just like, oh fuck. Right.
No, it was a real rug pull for the thing, because they'd never ever done anything like that before.
No.
You know, the whole if you think about it, each one has the same formula. You know, they always have you have to have a great stunt at the start. You know, a song from someone who's very current and you know,
An ambiguous film title. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like,
yeah. The fancy titles with the great, you know, graphics and everything, and then the setup, the mission. You know, going into a exotic location, meeting the Bond girl and the villain, and then there's action set pieces, and then the big finale. You know, and each film, you know, follows it. You know, to you know, variations of it, but they all follow the exact same formula. Now, it'd be interesting to see where they go. I mean, obviously, by the time they get round to doing the next film, it's because I think the anniversary of the first film is in October this year. So whether they'll use that as a platform to announce something new, I don't know. But,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hope so. I hope they don't leave it, because 5 years between films is a bit too long.
Yeah,
So
I think so.
I think they need to go back to doing it, you know, one every sort of 2 years or so. And if it doesn't work, you know, if you don't like it, there's
Fuck off.
well, no,
Watch something else.
Yeah. Well, no, you got
No,
you got
yeah.
20 or so other films that we all sort of enjoy, and just, you know, we've all got our favourites. And
Live and Let Die for me, man.
Yeah,
It's
you
Live
like-
and
you
Let
like-
Die
you
and the
like it.
Timothy Dalton movies, really.
Yeah.
Those are mine.
you know, we all got ones. I got ones I go to for various different reasons. You know, just depending on what. you're
Thunderball
feeling,
if you
know.
want to have a laugh.
Yeah, well, we this is what's great is that we watched a few, you know, together, and we found things that we not necessarily would have noticed on our own. You know, it was only we in company that we found out hilarious things and quirky characters.
Unsung villains like Vargas from Thunderball. I fucking love Vargas. Dirty sod. He's up to something.
Strange looking actor anyway. You know, he's just a bit
So
bit off balance.
So the two that play Mr. Wint and Mr. Kit.
Well, yeah, but they were brilliant. What's great about that is that one of them wasn't even an actor. One of them was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. The Mr. Wint with the sort of darker hair and the spraying of his perfume. He was an actor, bit quirky. In fact, his son was an actor. His son played George McFly in Back to the Future.
All right.
He's if you think they've actually got similar qualities, you know. And the other actor with the sort of longer balding hair and the mustache, he wasn't an actor. He played the bass in a jazz band with Thelonious Monk in Las Vegas. When the crew went to scout locations in Vegas, they went to a casino, and he was playing in a band there, and they just talked to them after, and they just loved his look and his style, and they said, you know, would you want to be an actor and be half this you know,
whatever they are.
Well, yeah, serial killing henchman, you know. And for the times, it's very bold, because they never had blatant gay characters in a mainstream film before.
No, that's right. That's right. Especially as villains.
Absolutely.
I don't actually recall seeing that before.
No, that was very, very bold, and
Yeah.
they did a lot of firsts Bond films, because people say, oh, they're sexist and stuff like that, but they had a lot of firsts, like having gay characters, and also with race as well, like with Roger Moore's
interracial kiss.
Yeah, that was very bold, and they were worried. The censors in America, particularly, they said this won't play well in certain places in America. You know, we're having interracial, and Roger Moore and director, they put their foot down and said, well, we're doing it. So, and they had it in the contract, they weren't allowed to edit the films when they went out. You know, they had to show them as is. And I'm glad they did, because again, at the time, you didn't really have, as you rightly say, you know, interracial kissing and stuff. So it's in films, and also having strong female characters.
Yeah.
You look at Barbara Bach in Spy Who Loved Me. She's a spy. She's every bit as good as Bond.
When you think about it, though, throughout the whole Bond series, you could actually pick quite a few female powerhouses, couldn't you?
100%, yeah. You look at Pussy Galore. She was a strong female character. She wasn't, you know, bowled over with his charm and everything like that. She sort of gave as good as she got, sort of thing. And or eventually she becomes the goodie at the end, you know, when she realises what's going on.
Conveniently.
Yeah. but they weren't all stereotyped damsels in distress. They were, you know, strong characters.
Yeah.
And they were first, you know, they did a lot of first, but obviously a lot of people don't realise that.
I've always said this about movies where, you know, you can't, when you're creating a story and a plot line, you can't allow certain social politics to get in the way.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about feminist or sexist ideals or racial ideals. If a creator says, a certain character is a certain race, that's his right to say that. And as a filmmaker who's taking on that, so for instance, if it's an author and it's being converted into a screenplay for a film, there's some shit that you have to honor and stick to. And that's why I love the Bond movies so much, because they've done that. They've incorporated certain other things like we've just discussed.
Yes.
But they've also stuck to their guns. Well, Bond is white.
Yeah.
But I don't think Fleming would turn in his grave if there was a black Bond.
No.
Or even a Chinese Bond. I don't think he would actually give a shit.
Yeah. No.
So,
I don't think. Yeah. I mean, it's.
Nor would I, really.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it would be interesting. Again, it's in their hands. It's up to them who they choose. The audience will tell them if they like it or not. That's the only way they'll do it. I'm not particularly worried.
I think what we need to remember, though, is that this is kind of fairly unprecedented for a movie series of this length, because what you've got now is the fact that it's become a British institution. It's a tradition to sit down on Boxing Day, or not Boxing Day, but on bank holidays.
And,
the fact that they've been going for this long says they know what they're fucking doing.
Yeah.
So
there's always an audience at the moment, and as the last one proved, there's still an audience.
Yeah.
And yes, they are British and they are successful, and it's good. We should embrace them. It's and as you say, they do it in every country, but on a bank holiday here, you always you turn a telly on, you're bound to find one on.
There's always one on.
Yeah, and it's great. It's just and it's just a little bit of childhood, there and everything. And it's what's great is every generation has their own films that they like. Yeah,
like the older audience, they're going to like the Connerys.
Yeah.
The younger audience are going to like the Pierces.
Yeah, everyone's got their own take, and I also notice a lot of people, particularly when I was younger, the Lazenby film, and that at the time was a weird one because it wasn't Connery. They're like, oh, we're not sure about this, and years later, it's only recently, and that they sort of people embraced it and said, actually, this is good because it follows the book very closely, and again, it's like what Craig did. It peels back a bit, a layer of Bond, and allows himself to be vulnerable and fall in love, and all to the point where he wants to leave the service and get married, which he does.
It kind of became the lesser son of a bastard child.
Yeah,
really, that movie,
it was great. But it dared to go there. That's what's great. And it's the end of the '60s, and Connery was wrapped up his things. Said that's it, and then they said, well, let's do this, and it was a very bold thing to end it the way he does on a downer. No film sort of.
Literally, dead. That's it. End credits.
It was a very
right.
No, exactly. Particularly with Bond, usually it ended with him and a rubber dinghy with a beautiful girl and the song.
Tempting re-entry, sir.
Yes, exactly. With the innuendo type, quip or something, and a wink and an eyebrow raise to the camera.
I'm sure we could try to enlarge your vocabulary.
Yes.
Yeah. I love it. I love the Bond movies. There's such a range of emotions and experiences.
That's great. There's something for whatever mood you're in. They're all there. If you're in the mood for something funny or something serious-ish, the point because they're,
long may it last. To be quite honest, I mean,
Yeah, we'll see.
Has to stay fresh, and we'll see what happens down the road.
Yes.
Right. Well, that's going to sort of wrap it up for this podcast. There will be a lot more like this, hopefully, in the future. So if you like what you're hearing, give us a thumbs up, give us a like. I hate doing all this kind of shit, but you kind of have to these days with YouTube. So until the next episode, I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Cool. See you later, everyone.